Greetings everybody, this is the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage, and you are looking at an early 1960s, I want to say 1961, 1963, white 565 model. This machine is all steel. It is a beast. It is heavy, and it is meant for sewing up a storm. This is not the first of these machines I've overhauled before. I'm pretty sure I've overhauled a 563. You know, there were a lot of companies like White were big enough. They had a series of models, and sometimes you would look at them and they almost looked the same, but they would tweak a feature here, add a feature, subtract a feature, and they did all of this to give people lots of choices and price points. Right? Remember, sewing machines were expensive. And a lot of people who went looking for one had not shopped for one ever, or if they had, it had been a long time normally. Because people used to keep the things that they bought for quite long periods because they were so durable. Anyway, the White was a big deal because the White Company, which was an American company who had originally made sewing machines in Cleveland, Ohio, they ended up outsourcing to Germany and then to Japan, where this machine was made. And they had certain things they wanted. You know, they went to the manufacturer and they said, no, we want our machine to have a certain look, and we want these different features. One of the features that White was known for, going all the way back to their early rotaries in the early 1900s, was the fact that the bobbin winder would engage by pushing up. A number of them flipped down, but in this case it would flip up. The 565 model had a semi-automatic bobbin winder, meaning, and I'll just show you guys right here, notice the bobbin winder is not engaged, and as I move the hand wheel over here with my right hand, you see the needle moving, right? But when you push up, which you always did with the White models, you push up, and now the rubber tire, which has been replaced, I've replaced it, now it will engage with the hand wheel, right? Now, notice also that the needle is not moving, but what about, now I can turn that wheel, it's not moving, but then what's the deal with what about the clutch knob? Well, there is not. There's just a cap on top here, just a plastic cap. There is no clutch knob because White wanted to be innovative and offer customers a reason to buy their machine. They said, well, you don't have to deal with that clutch knob anymore. You can just do this. And I've shown in a different video, there's a way, this is all spring-loaded, and there's a lever that engages and disengages the drive shaft of the sewing machine so that the needle won't move. Sometimes it'll wiggle or hop some, but that's not unusual. But I've gone through, cleaned, and lubricated this device. It still works beautifully. I just think it's kind of interesting that White took that extra step. Eventually, we would even move away from these types of bobbin winders. They would keep automating them, but these are really made just beautifully. You have stitch length control right here on the front, which also works fantastically. You have needle position. You can adjust to the left or the right. We're going to leave it in the center for our purposes. And of course, you had zigzag. You could buy you could buy straight stitch only versions of this machine. They would have been cheaper. But zigzag was, becoming it had already been a thing in the 50s with the Italian companies, and it was increasingly seen as important for being able to sew a variety of projects. And this particular one is spring-loaded. This lever here, you see me tapping with my finger. So all the way to the right, you'll notice we have two dials here that control. And you say, well, what if I want it to go to a width of 3, but I don't want it to go past that? Well, then you turn this dial here. You can come over, and then of course, if you want to stop at 3, you then need to bring in the other dial to lock it in, and you lock it in place. And you might think, well, okay, why was that such a big deal? Why don't you just make a lever that you can move with some resistance? There's a big spring controlling this, and you can see it if you see any of the if you see behind here. I'll I've got some photos for the posting that I'll put in there where you can see it. But essentially, there's a lot of mechanisms that exist inside the machine in order to make all of this happen. But the settings here were interesting, and I've noticed that if for example you're sewing a straight stitch, you can actually customize. You can actually come over here and adjust this while the machine is sewing. You see the needle moving in response to this device, and that's kind of interesting. It was kind of a way to do something freehand. Whether people actually did is a whole nother matter, but again, that was the marketing take. The machine has a light, which will come on as soon as I plug the machine in, and of course we have a hatch up here, and it takes cams. Now, there were versions that didn't take cams, so again, you had many options. The color scheme is kind of interesting because it's a two-tone turquoise. This is sort of a very light powder blue, powder turquoise, if you will, and then a deeper turquoise color. Now, turquoise took off in the 1950s, and you will see a lot of things from the 50s that were done in turquoise, and then also coral pinks and other bright colors. But, in the early 60s, you could say, well, we're not in the 50s anymore, but the turquoise color was so popular and so many people purchased products in that color in the 50s that manufacturers just kept going with it. It kept selling products. So, by 1962, 63, this color was not state of the art. It was, you could buy it in all kinds of items, and you can see that if you pull up any 1950s items, you'll see this amongst our other colors. What else do we have? We can adjust our feed dogs with this dial here. Button, dial, whatever. High is for normal sewing. Low, you would choose. You have different options with this feed dog adjustment mechanism. So you have high. High is for regular sewing for wovens. Low would be if you wanted to sew delicate. Sometimes feed dogs can be rough on things like silk and satin and very, very, delicate fabrics. And then, of course, if you were going to free motion work or do darning, you would just push this knob all the way over to the down position. So that's cool. This machine takes class 15 bobbins and uses a class 15 bobbin case. What else to say about it? It is fairly fancy for the year. There may have been further fancy versions, but has a 1.3 amp motor. It is strong, very powerful, one of the most powerful motors ever put into a home sewing machine. And anyway, we're going to set it up here and give you guys a little demonstration of how she runs. Now, like many sewing machines of the period, this machine has two spindles on the back here, and I've got a spool of thread, or they came with two spindles. This particular machine, like many from the period, had more than one spindle because you could set it up for double needle sewing. Okay, and you would often get this special needle that looks like a fork, and you could do double needle stitching. Not a lot of people actually did it. Maybe they weren't willing to learn it, or they just didn't care. But in any case, I have mentioned to you guys before why I like many of these 1960s white machines and quite a few of the Kenmores, because they just have a solidness behind them that's just hard to explain. Strong motors, I just don't have as many issues with them as I do with others, but again, every machine must be inspected and gone through. You cannot take anything for granted because you don't know the life a machine has led. Okay, let's see. There we go. There's our light. I prefer the daylight here to show you guys things like stitching. So let's see if that will help us out here. So we're going to start with a long straight stitch, just to give you guys an idea of how she stitches. I've got a sort of a lightweight cotton here, cotton woven material. And I can slow it down. And I can also speed. This machine has more speed than, say, earlier white models. You'll find that as we go through time, if you start with, say, the 1860s at the beginning of sewing machines, they were a lot slower. And then over the years, they would get you would see an increase in the speed that those machines could sew. And you can adjust your presser foot pressure up there on top there. Remarkably quiet. You don't hear a ton of noise off of this machine. Let's see here. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to loosen my tension just a bit here. And I think we'll go ahead here and we'll show off, I want to show off the zigzag capacity for the machine. Just have to find my scissors. Okay, so I've taking a look here, we can see makes a very nice straight stitch. I'm going to show off the zigzag capacity of the machine, and we'll fold this over so that we get 4 layers. In fact, I'll come right down the center here, see what we can get the machine to do. Now, I'm going to come over, we'll just do the widest zigzag. And I could go faster, right? Just going slower so we can actually see, you guys can see it doing its thing, because this thing will really fly. Many people cannot sew. They don't have the skill to sew that fast. A few do. Some of you actually do. Okay, let's come down here and we'll come over, and I'm going to do one last row, and we'll save that for a shorter zigzag. And I'm going to show you guys, I'll do a separate video on the cams, because the cams are kind of an interesting option. Again, this would have been an option for people. They would not have been included, I don't believe, because the dealer could, they could upsell the customer on it and make extra money on such things. Car dealerships to this day, they sell you all kinds of special stuff, accessories and things that you could get if you want to. Okay, let's see. We're going to shorten, we're going to keep the width, and I'm going to shorten the length of the stitch. You guys can see the difference that it makes. You can see I really sped it up there at the end. I've met a few people over the years that literally can sew. Their sewing skill is so high. Many of them are clothing designers. They can sew really fast. And I had one client that actually, she could sew faster than the machine could move. But that's not true of most of us, okay? Most of you would not even need the maximum speed for this machine, but it's there if you need that. Okay. So here we go. Let's turn back over. We'll kind of get caught up with where we are here. Okay, we've got our row of straight, let's put this in front where you can see it. You'll see the row of straight stitches and then coming back around. And here you'll see the first, this is the long wide zigzag. Very, very nice stitch. And then coming around here, I shortened it to get a different zigzag look. And that was that's kind of like a light turquoise colored thread there. And then we have the white bobbin thread on the other side. Just a really fantastic zigzag stitch. This machine is going to be sold without the cams. The cams will be sold separately. I used to just kind of put all the stuff together, but I've learned over the years that not everybody wants the cams. Some people who want them really want them, and the other people who don't, they don't. And I can charge less for the machine than I would if I was including the cams, because finding the matching cams, as I mentioned once, is not easy, because it says decorative cams. These things are floating around the world, lots of different cam styles, and you can't find them because they don't even tell you what they go to. And that's there's a lot of these things out there. You just they're separated and lost, been separated from the machine. Anyway, I will put a full listing of all the overhaul procedures that were done to this machine. It was running when I got it, but many of the machines that I overhaul run, but they don't run well because sewing machines need to be maintained. They require maintenance and service. And this machine was completely gone through and had a new, like I say, I'll put everything on the listing, but it has a new bobbin tire, right? So you don't have to worry about the bobbin tire crumbling on you. And oh, forgot to mention, we do have back tacking. Like a lot of machines from the era, we have back tacking with this button, right? But like I say, you can still get her light bulb works fine, but you can still get them. You can even put in an LED version if you want. Anyway, if you are interested in the machine, reach out to me. I'd be happy to set up a time for you to come by and you can test it out if you wish. This machine is really powerful, and a little bit of history, and like I say, it's got this wonderful retro color, it's genuinely turquoise from the early 60s. Again, one of my favorite models to overhaul because they're strong and they are typically, most of the time, not fussy, but they can be, like any machine, to overhaul, to restore. But this one, it had some light use fairly recently. It required a lot of lubrication. It was quite dry and got a lot of the fuzz and the dust and the lint cleaned out of it. And anyway, this is, again, if you're looking for a machine, you need zigzag. And then just as a reminder, the cams to this machine will be sold separately. They'll be in a separate listing, and if you are interested in those, let me know as well. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it, and we will see you next time.